And I just turned around and I hauled ass out of there. I was done. I wasn't dealing with that.
The hypocrisy of the cult is one of the things that turned me away the quickest.
When I turned my headlights on, it turned and looked at us. And one of the things I remember the most were the eyes were glowing red.
I see an orb of light. It is just circling these steps like it is waiting for me.
And he begins to tell them that he saw a UFO. They're basically like, what are you talking about? That's 7 foot up on a tree, peeking around it. And that's where I saw the top of the muzzle, nose, and the eyes. As soon as I made eye contact with this thing, it felt like death.
Welcome back to Tinfoil Tales. Today I'm joined by my guest, Nathan, here in studio. This is the second time you've been here, so glad to have you back.
How's it going?
Pretty good. Very early.
Yeah. What time do you usually get up?
Oh, I'm usually awake, but I was awake. This is an early recording for me.
Yeah.
We're not even at 9 o'clock yet.
Yep, not quite. Yeah, I had a lot of like weird paranormal experiences that when my dad and I were on the Erie Clacker episode, I kind of had mentioned and hinted at, but wanted to kind of delve into more detail because a lot of it is a good contributing factor as to why I was so willing to accept the Bigfoot thing when we had all of the activity that was in the Erie Clacker episode. So, I mean, and the idea of talking about it, I love, but the actual talking about it part, I don't really super care for. But when my brother and I were little, and this would probably be about 2008 or 9 maybe, and this was more or less probably about the first paranormal experience that I would say that I had. But my brother and I would go for about a week to our aunt and uncle's house every year. Our grandma and grandpa would take us over there. It was in Columbus, Indiana. And we would just spend a week there with our aunt and uncle and our cousins, and right around summertime when they were out of school, and didn't have to worry about the school schedule. And so normally them having to go to school wasn't a problem. We could hang out the whole week, nobody had to get up early. There was nothing, nothing going on. Well, there was one year, I mean, there was a couple years that this happened, but one year that it happened, there was like a day, or it was an every other day thing, something like that, where our cousins had to get up and go to school for like a day. I don't even remember why or what caused it or whatever, but for some reason, and I was maybe like 10, 12 maybe when this happened. So I didn't care what the planning process was, I just wanted to go hang out. So anyway, they had to get up, go to school. So they had like a family room that connected to like a hallway, and I can draw you like a diagram of this later and you can actually see where all this stuff kind of was. And then adjacent to the family room, there was a dining room that had like an archway, so you could see straight into the dining room from where the family room was, and there was a couch in there and then a TV on the opposite wall. And the couch in the family room was a pull-out bed, and that's where my brother and I slept every year that we were there. And then there was an upper story where like my grandma and grandpa would sleep. They had like a guest bedroom up there. My cousins' rooms were upstairs. And then, all the bedrooms were upstairs. So my aunt and uncle and everybody slept up there. So anyway, my brother and I and our cousin Trevor, the three of us are in the pull-out bed, having a sleepover in the family room. And so I'm on the side of the bed that's furthest away from the dining room. My brother is on the side of the bed closest to this dining room, that's adjacent to the family room. And my cousin, he's in the middle between the two of us. And he was the youngest of the three of us. So he was just, excited to be there. Well, he was bummed because he had to get up in the morning for school. So his mom comes in and wakes him up real early in the morning. It wasn't dark, but the sun was just starting to come up. I don't know what time it was. I didn't wear a watch or anything then, but I'm guessing maybe 6:30 in the morning, probably about. So she's getting him up and getting him around for school. Of course, it woke my brother and I up, So here we are on opposite sides of this bed, just kind of laying there, awake. And so the side of the bed that I'm on, I can look straight down. There's a hallway where the front door connects to, so I can look down this hallway and see the front door from where I'm laying. So I watch my aunt take Trevor out. He's got his backpack and everything on, and they go out the front door and leave for school. And far as I'm aware, my grandma and grandpa are still asleep in the upper bedroom. And so we're just laying there, in the real early morning. And it's light enough that you can see everything around us. It wasn't pitch black or anything like that. But we're just laying there, and maybe like 10, 15 minutes go by since my aunt had taken our cousin out the front door. And we're just laying there. About 15 minutes later, I heard what it sounded like. I mean, the loudest explosion you could possibly imagine. Didn't feel it. There was no shockwave or anything like that. It was just the sound of it, just the noise. Almost like it was like an explosion sound being played on a loudspeaker, but inside my aunt and uncle's house. Of course, that woke me completely up. So now I'm like wide awake. Now my brother, he's turned on his side facing his face toward the dining room. So I can't see my brother. I don't know if he's awake or not, or if he's heard this, or, if he's even aware any of it's going on. I didn't hear anything upstairs. My grandma and grandpa evidently didn't hear it. And maybe 30 seconds go by from the time of the explosion sound. And I heard like a really, really loud, again, like it was on a loudspeaker. And it sounded like a cliche, like Halloween decoration ghost moan is what it sounded like, but just unbelievably loud. Like there was a PA system in the house, like playing this sound. And of course, I mean, I'm just like terrified. My heart's pounding because I don't understand where these noises are coming from or how this is happening. And then maybe 10, 15 seconds go by, and we heard it was a really loud, it sounded like a metal door scraping open against like concrete or something. It was like a whining metal door kind of grinding, like struggling to open sort of noise. And I'm like, so I'm laying on my back. So in my peripheral vision, I can see the dining room, and straight ahead of me is this hallway. So the dining room's off to my right, and I'm on the opposite bed from the dining room. And I'm like laying there on my back, just like frozen in fear, because I have no clue what is causing this. And it was maybe a minute later, after the metal door noise, the dining room lights up, completely lit up red, like a red. It wasn't like a click. It was like a gradual, like growing, increasingly bright red light. But I don't remember seeing like the lights in the kitchen turn red or where this red light was coming from. It was just like the whole room just glowed red somehow. And so you have the dining room there. And then if you turn left around the corner, there's like a single doorway that leads right into the kitchen. So the kitchen and the dining room are connected. And from that doorway, which I can't see from where I'm laying, this thing, it was maybe like 2.5 feet tall. It was like this tall. And it comes running in from the kitchen and it jumps up on the dining room table. And it turns like toward my brother and like arcs its arms out and like is staring right in our direction. And the way it moved was the same way like a midget runs. If you've ever seen like footage of how they move, kind of like a labored sort of kind of motion to them. And that's how this thing moved. But it was way too small to be a person. I mean, it was maybe half the size of our youngest cousin, Megan. And she wasn't very old at the time, maybe 7 or 8, maybe probably younger than that. But so this thing's standing on top of the dining room table, staring in our direction. And then it jumps down off the dining room table, runs from the dining room into the family room, and there were end tables on both sides of this couch that pulled out into this bed. It jumps up on the end table on my brother's side of the bed. He's the closest to the dining room side. Now I've kind of got my head like cocked, like kind of watching what's going on, but trying to act like I'm asleep, I guess. I don't know what I was thinking. I mean, I was just absolutely unbelievably terrified. And it jumps up on this end table and it does the exact same motion where it like turns and it like does this weird, almost like you would see like Yosemite Sam, like with his arms out to the side, getting ready to grab his guns, is what it looked like, with its arms bowed out. And it turned and it just like stared right at my brother, like right at him. And again, he's turned on his side toward the dining room. So I don't know if he's awake. I don't know if he's experiencing this, or if I'm the only one seeing it, or if this is a dream that I'm having, if I've fallen back asleep, or what is going on. So it stands there for maybe a minute and stares directly at him. And so I'm probably 5 feet away from this thing. I mean, I got a really good look at it. It had like long, weird looking ears. It had like grayish, real wrinkly skin to it. It had like really long, I mean, the teeth on it were probably 2.5 inches long, and they were like really like thin and pointy. And it was dressed like a clown. It had like a clown outfit on, and it had like the multicolored wig on where you have like the different segments and each one's a different color, like the fuzzy wig. It had that on. Now, why in the world it was dressed like a clown, I have no clue. I have no idea. But anyway, so it's on the end table and staring right at my brother, and it like jumps down off the side. It turns, runs back into the dining room, goes around the outside edge of the dining room table, back through that single doorway where I can't see it anymore. It like disappears into the kitchen. And it was like total silence. And then I'm like sitting there like, what the heck? And then the red light just like slowly like faded out until there I was again, laying there in the early morning, light was all that, the real early morning light was all that was there. And it was over. There was no, whatever it was no longer there. I mean, it wasn't, I mean, I don't know how to even explain it. It was like, it just went into the kitchen and then it just disappeared because we didn't, there was no evidence that this, we didn't find footprints in the carpet or, whatever. It just like it wasn't, hiding in underneath somebody's bed or anything like that. It was never found. And I never told anybody because I didn't know what this was, if it was a dream and if it wasn't, it was so crazy that I almost just kind of acknowledge that it hadn't really happened, because how could that possibly have happened, was kind of my rationality for it, even being that young. So anyway, maybe 10 years go by, 11 years go by, and my mom and dad and my brother, the four of us are sitting at a Chinese restaurant in Wabash, and we're eating, and I don't even remember now how it happened, but we got on the topic of paranormal encounters, because by this point I had several things that's happened to me that I told my parents about. Never told my parents about the clown demon thing. So we're sitting there, and my dad, he tells a couple, weird things that happened to him, and my mom, she's like, doesn't believe in any of it, and she thinks we're crazy, and I'm telling a couple stories. Didn't even think about the clown demon thing, never even entered my mind, because at this point, I'm not registering it as having actually happened. It just doesn't even register with me that was really even a thing, even though I still kind of in the back of my mind remembered it, but it didn't cross my mind in that conversation. And so my brother, he's like, just deadpan honest. And he has autism. So, if you ask him something, he's going to give you a straight up, honest answer, no problem. So, he's always telling you the truth. And he's sitting there, and I've never told him the story, never told anybody the story. He sits there and he goes, yeah, well, there is that one time Nate and I got attacked by the clown demon at our aunt and uncle's house. And I turned to him and I said, you remember that? And he goes, well, yeah. And so I'm like, whoa. And so my parents, they're like, what are you talking about? The clown demon thing. And I'm like, yeah, explain the story. So he tells the story exactly how I remember it. And so he was awake and he experienced this at the same time that I did. And so this hits me like a ton of bricks, oh crap, that actually did really happen? What in the world? And so I'm finding this out for the first time, that he was awake and he did hear these noises and he did see this thing and it did get right up in his face. He says he remembers it laughing. I don't remember it laughing or making any noise. But he says he remembers it laughing, because I talked to him about it maybe 6 months ago, 8 months ago, somewhere in there, and just kind of make sure I'm not crazy, tell this to me again, and let's go over the details of what we remember, and try to piece it together. And that was one detail that he remembered that I don't remember, and I don't know why. I don't know if I was just so terrified I didn't care or what, I don't know. So I got, started watching paranormal shows, because I'm like, okay, well, if this happened, I got to figure this out, And then at this point, I'm thinking Bigfoot is totally not real. I don't believe in Bigfoot at all, but now I believe in ghosts, ghosts are obviously real. And I'm thinking, Bigfoot, ghost, dogman, whatever, has nothing to do with each other. It's all different, isolated individual things. And I never was, I looked this up on the internet. I watched every episode of every show I could think to watch. I've told this story to several people from different jobs. And of course, a lot of them think you're nuts, or you're just pulling their leg, or, just trying to tell them a good bedtime story or whatever, or a campfire story. But I can't find any reference to this online. Had a guy at work, and he's kind of into the paranormal, and so I think he believes that it happened, and he tried to get ChatGPT to generate an image of it. He says, okay, well, explain the features of it. What did it look like? And I'm explaining exactly in detail, as closely as I can, what it looked like. And the best way to describe it for anybody listening, if you want to see roughly what it looked like, if you look up an image of the leprechaun creature from the movie Leprechaun, the face and the ears and the way its skin looked was almost identical, and its expression looked almost identical to that. Now, when I saw this, didn't even know what the movie Leprechaun was. But there's a picture on Google Images, and I'll see if I can find it after the show and show it to you, where it's like coming through like the light of like a doorway or something, and it is freakishly similar to what I saw. Now, of course, that's a fictional movie, and it was all makeup and prosthetics and stuff. But that's a good, imagine that picture, but dressed like a clown, and the mouth was a lot larger, and the teeth were thin and a lot longer than the Leprechaun picture. But anyway, so I'm researching paranormal stuff, can't find any reference to it. ChatGPT couldn't generate an image of it. It told my coworker that it didn't have enough material that it could find to even generate an image. And because I told him, I said, it's probably not going to generate an image of it, because I have searched for this in every way you can think of. Images, folklore tales, Native American, ancient history, mythology, everything. There's not anything that I can find that refers. I've never heard an episode of any podcast guest talk about something relatively similar until here recently. And so after the clown demon thing, and of course, at this point, I know for a fact paranormal stuff is real to some extent. I have constant, continuous paranormal things kind of happen to me over time. One of which, I used to work at Orion Safety Products in the Martin and Shaft side. And in their main production room, it was an open room with just tables. And so from anywhere in the room, you could practically see the entire room except for where the time clock was. It was around a corner. And when I first started, I used to come in early because I wanted to, make a good first impression. So I would come in early, about a half hour before anybody else was there, and I would come in and I'd be the one to flip all the lights on and clock in, and I would sit down and start doing my thing. Well, one of the jobs that we had required you to catch these loops in like a plastic tub, a big gray plastic tub. So I go into the hallway where the tubs are at, and I grab one, and I'm heading out into the main production room. And I'm like halfway into the room, heading toward the time clock and the light switch, turn the lights on and to clock in. And I hear footsteps. And the floor was like a real coarse, like popcorn ceiling type texture. And so it made a really distinct noise when you walked on it. And I distinctly heard footsteps from the time clock walk around the corner through that open room and right up to me. And I'm literally standing there looking directly at where these footsteps are coming from. And there is nobody there. And I'm like looking around the room like, what is going on? Like, who is walking up to me? And it gets almost right up to me, and then it just stopped. And I'm like, what the heck? I mean, that freaked me out. And then I had, let's see, gosh, I've had all kinds of weird stuff. Here, maybe about a year ago, I was working at the Y. And normally I go in on like a Friday and leave before they close. Well, this particular week, for whatever reason, I couldn't be in on a Friday, so I decided to come in and clean the childcare area, which is a separated, secured area of the building, on a Saturday. Well, by the time I got in there was nobody else there. Parking lot was completely abandoned, and so I go in and I'm doing my thing, and I've probably been there for maybe an hour. And one of the last things I did is I would gather the trash up in the kitchen and take it out, and on my way out to clock out, I'd throw the trash away. So I'm standing, there's like a lunchroom that has a wooden door that separates it from the kitchen. I'm standing in that doorway, pulling a trash bag out of a trash can, and plain as day, I heard on a wood door like 3 or 4 rapid, distinct, hard knocks, like somebody trying to get my attention. And there was nobody in that building. And I like went back outside, looked around. There was nobody in the parking lot. Nobody ever came out or greeted me or anything. And I went back inside, checked every classroom, checked everywhere. There was nobody else in that building. And that was freaky. Trying to think of what else I've had happen. Yeah, similar, but I'll try to see if I can find a picture here of what the clown demon thing looked like. But so I start listening to podcasts after our Bigfoot activity started happening. Now again, I didn't, before the clacking that I heard, I didn't believe in Bigfoot. Well, I had a moment there in the woods when I started to hear the clacking and I realized it was rocks. And I think in large part to the clown demon encounter that immediately I knew what it was. And it's like I didn't even have to question it. I knew immediately what was doing, what would be several miles back in the woods smacking large rocks together in strange patterns. And so that's when I started listening to Sasquatch Chronicles. And one of the episodes he had, and I wish I could remember the episode number, and I'm going to go back because I remember the episode, the very first episode I ever listened to. I'm going to listen to episodes before and after it and find that episode, and I'll send it to you if I find it. But he had a guy that lost a knife, I believe it was, in a state forest or something. And he went back to go find it. And before he saw this Sasquatch creature, he heard a loud metal door noise in the woods. And I'm like, and so I listen to these podcasts while I'm cleaning the Y. So I'm like mopping the floor and he says this and my jaw just like drops. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. What? You heard a really loud, and he described it as like just really loud, like a metal door noise. I'm like, what the heck? That's a really weird detail for this guy to know that's related to something that has actually happened to me. That's freaky. And maybe 3 months go by, and I find the Confessionals episode with Martin Groves. And he's talking about what happened to him in the LBL with these dogmen creatures and these Bigfoot-like creatures. And that's a wild story if nobody's listened to it. But he heard a metal door noise in the LBL before what happened to him and his hunting partner happened to him. And again, I've never told this story. Now what happened to Martin Groves was in like the 90s. I want to say 1993. So he would have heard the noise before I did, but I hadn't ever listened to any of this stuff or what, like I had no frame of reference for what that meant until that happened to me. So had this been something that I could have listened to back then, it wouldn't have meant anything before the clown demon thing. And then there's another episode of the Confessionals. I don't remember what the episode is, but it's a British guy that him and one of his friends spent some time with this dude that was big into hunting Bigfoot and did all kinds of weird things. Well, they had these red portals open in the forest and like these small, and he explains them as like 2.5 feet tall, same size as this thing we saw, come out of these red glowing portals and like attack them. And they had to like fend them off with flashlights, and shining a flashlight on them made them like disappear. And so there's another through line of like, okay, so that's, I guess would count as the red light, sort of, maybe. And it directly corresponds to seeing these tiny little short creatures. Now the way he described them, they didn't look like clowns. They were essentially naked, whatever they were. And then on one of your episodes here, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, I listened to it, and it was a woman telling you a story about paranormal activity or something. And she had an experience where she basically had a nightmare or a dream or something where this like thing that was the same size of what we saw and looked, she describes it as like a troll or something, I believe. But the way she describes it is the thing that we saw, like in person, in the flesh. Because this thing it didn't look like a ghost. It wasn't translucent. You couldn't see through it. It was a solid creature, and you could hear it like running on the floor when it would move. So it had weight, and I mean, it was there in person when my brother and I saw it. And so finally, I'm starting to get somewhere with at least finding things that kind of correspond to it or correlate with it. But the realization there for me is that I've got two different things where a dog man and a Sasquatch were seen. Both of them had the metal door noise. I saw the clown demon. It had like an explosion, a ghost moan, and the metal door noise. There's a lady who more or less saw the same creature sort of that we saw. And so, I mean, over the course of researching this stuff, it's kind of come to my attention that these things are more than likely, whatever they are, it's the same phenomenon, kind of manifesting in different forms.
I think a lot of it is how we interpret it.
Right.
And your description of going back to the clown, it's very reminiscent to what people reported in Europe. And I was looking for a photo of it, of the old elf and fae stories. If you look into like the actual, like nowadays they're all cute and cuddly.
Right.
The original descriptions, like hundreds of years ago, were very creepy. They had longer noses, they had the pointy ears, they had big sharp teeth, they were gray, pale.
Yep, that's the color this was. It was like a pale, almost like, well, take the color of this. It was like a gray, kind of this color. It was like I don't even know how to describe it to the audience, but it was just like a pale, almost ashy gray would be a good way to put it. But the skin was like really if you imagined like somebody that was like 130 years old and how wrinkled their face would be. But if it was like elongated and like pointy chin and pointy ears and like, big over exaggerated pointy nose type thing, but it had that ashy gray wrinkly skin. That's what
It's, again, the similarities between that and the original descriptions of what people said that these elves used to look like. Like, look up Scandinavian elves sometime.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I will absolutely research it. I mean, that's...
And, like, the stories from the original people that had reported that, even like leprechauns, same thing. Maybe people are reporting seeing the same things, but they call them something different. So when people call them leprechauns, they were elves over there. Some people call them fairies. Some people call them trolls. Like,
I think that's exactly right. I think, yeah, because every culture has a Bigfoot. Every culture's seen, there's all kinds of, minotaurs and all kinds of weird things in mythology and, stories. And I mean, there's a lot of things that essentially are something that some people have seen, in modern times.
Yeah. And even in modern times like today, people are still seeing similar things because they report little humanoid. I've got some episodes from a couple of years ago. The guy said he'd saw something. He actually had footprints, and he showed me their little humanoid looking footprints that were running across the sand. Well, nowadays people call these things puckwudgies. And they also call them like little people. I think even the Native Americans had stories of these things here. So what if everything's still the same thing? Like, research into puckwudgies, because the description you're giving is also similar to what people report as a puckwudgie looking like.
Right.
So
the thing that confuses me about it is, why did it look like a clown? That was the strangest thing. And my brother remembers it looking like a clown. So it's not like, and I hated clowns when I was little. Oh man. So you could say, well, maybe it was manifesting your fear of clowns.
Right.
But my brother, as far as I know, wasn't scared of clowns that I can think of. And he saw the exact same thing that I did in all of its exact detail of what the hair looked like and the outfit and the way it moved and the way it stood and what it did and how long it stood on the table and, the facial features and everything. I mean, he remembers it other than the fact that he says he remembers it laughing. He more or less remembers the entire story. He remembers the red light, the dining room lighting up red and glowing red throughout the whole encounter. I mean, he remembers every single detail as I remember it. And so I don't know. It was just crazy. I mean, it's just crazy.
The red light, and you mentioned the British guy. That's Adam Davies. I'm actually going to be at the Bigfoot conference here down in 2 weeks down in Kentucky, Red River Gorge. Adam's going to be there. I met Adam a couple years ago. He's a cool guy. But yeah, he said that they saw like this red lighted portal open up and these little humanoid looking things.
Who's this now?
Adam Davies. He was the guy you mentioned that was on Tony's episode. He's the British guy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. His name's Adam. But he'd reported seeing these things open. And I think they were on a Bigfoot expedition is what they were doing.
Yeah.
And he ended up seeing these things come out that wasn't anything Bigfoot like.
Right.
But he has been on all sorts of shows. He's worked behind the scenes and everything. So he's got a lot of stuff behind his expeditions. So that's just one of all things to report. That's just one of the random things that
he
could have said.
Yeah.
So,
and that's what's crazy to me is like you listen to people's stories on, Sasquatch Chronicles or Tinfoil Tales or the Confessionals or, there's a lot of different shows that some of them tackle different elements. Some of them focus on purely paranormal ghost stories. Some of them like Sasquatch Chronicles or Sasquatch related, Tinfoil Tales is great because you just kind of like dive into every element of it. But you listen to these people's stories and you don't know if they're just, making up some crazy story because they want to, get attention on the internet or whatever. So when I'm listening to this stuff and I could pick out a detail that corresponds to this encounter, I know that whatever that person's saying, more than likely, this really did happen because that's a weird, really off the wall, the red light or the metal door thing or whatever it may be, would be a just crazy off the wall detail to throw in there for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
If you were just purely inventing a story, you wouldn't have a weird detail in there like that I know would correspond to something that really happened. So that for me helps a lot with stories like that when I hear one that includes something similar.
The thing that stands out to me about the clown, and maybe it's because of where we're from, but Peru,
right?
Clown Town.
Yeah.
So with this being a circus area, and we have a whole lot of weird stuff here. You and your father were in my documentary, and you guys had the clacking activity at your property.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much other stuff that goes on around here that didn't even make it into the documentary.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think I sent you video of that tree that got pulled up and set in the tree structure. That happened after the documentary was released.
Yeah.
And that was a really, really good find.
And then your dad had recently, you just sent me the photos of, or the video of the big, wide, strided tracks.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And
yeah, we're still getting good. I mean, really good, solid, constant activity out there that would indicate, Sasquatch activity or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
I say the tracks that he found were down by his work site, which is right down where multiple people have reported seeing Dogman.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, you're talking about the tracks in the snow.
The snow tracks.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, those weren't in our woods. Yeah.
Those were down by the river, which
Right.
is right where I'd filmed some of the stuff in the documentary because that's where multiple people reported seeing Dogman. And then
Yeah.
lo and behold, we find, or you guys sent me these big tracks that no person was stepping because they were
Yeah.
at least 7 to 8 feet.
Right. Oh yeah, it was wild.
I don't even know how tall something would be unless it was like hopping.
And it didn't look like a human footprint either, like
No.
you would see in a. I mean, in the tracks we found here maybe a month ago when we found the site where the tree was pulled up and set in the tree structure, you could tell, it looked like a human foot, but it was like 15, 16 inches long,
Yeah.
like the track that we ended up casting a couple years ago.
Oh, if you watch the documentary, and I don't really say a whole lot, because there's a lot that happened before that, like of just walking around. So I just try to edit out a lot of stuff that wasn't of interest. But when we were out at Okefenokee, we found all of those tracks, and they looked humanoid. Some of them looked like a dog, but the ones that I really focused on were the ones that looked like had an opposable thumb for like a big toe. That is not, even in Bigfoot lore, that is not normal for a Bigfoot. You don't usually hear about them having like a ape type foot. They're more humanoid. So was someone out there walking their gorilla?
Yeah, right. And that's what just gets me about it is like what would be considered the rational explanations end up being so far less rational than just, well, it's just, a Bigfoot clacking. Because what's the alternative to there was a Bigfoot clacking rocks in the woods 2 miles in the woods? Well, there had to be a guy back there in the middle of the night on a weekend in 20-degree weather at 11:30 at night who didn't even know that I was there. And for some reason, he decides to spend 40 minutes with several other people spaced 3/4 of a mile apart, communicating back and forth each other with rocks and it's just ridiculous.
I get comments and people say things, and I'd heard, like, for your guys' story, someone chimed in that otters crack shells with a rock to try and get in there to eat the clam or whatever. But
well, there was, I mean,
it's too consistent for an otter, and we don't really have
and I could at some point take you back in the wooded area where this happened, but there's no water source, or there's not even a creek back there. I mean, it's literally just hills and hollers and woods is all that's back there.
And that's what I was getting ready to say is, like, people can make that assumption, but they don't know the location. So if you see the location, there is no water source. And if there is a water source, it's not an otter, because the closest water would have been the Wabash River. And I don't know very many otters living in the Wabash River. I'm sure there's probably some, but...
Well, and again, even if you assume there was, now you're having to play the game where you're going to assume for some reason that an otter got out of the river, walked like
several miles,
5+ miles into the woods just to break open a clam, and it and he had
so long.
Right, and he had such a supply of clams with him that it took him over 40 minutes to get them all open, and there was 3 different otters, and they were all doing this all at the same. Like, it's just goofy.
Yeah. So for people that look for explanations, I do the same thing, but the logical explanation for what someone could say this was doesn't always add up. Again, like we said, was a gorilla walking out at Okefenokee? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Now, and I've got another element, too, of the clown demon thing that I think, I have no way of knowing, but I think it connects to it. And because the clown demon story is obviously so much more different than, I guess you would consider a Bigfoot more rational or natural, so to speak, than the clown demon. I don't know how you would even know that, but so this is maybe 7-8 years before, probably not that long ago, maybe 6 years before the clown demon thing happened. And my brother and I used to sleep in the same room when we were really, really young. And I'm like, oh, geez.
Had a interruption, but I forget what you were saying at this point.
Well, I was talking about how I had an experience that connected, I think, to the clown demon thing that happened several years later. But when my brother was maybe 4 or 5, so I would have been like 7 or 8 years old, maybe. Um, we used to sleep in the same room, and for a while we slept in basically like a twin bed side by side. Well, eventually we upgraded to a bunk bed, and I slept on the top bunk, he slept on the bottom bunk. So anyway, um, I had a nightmare one night, and now I will preface by saying this was definitely a dream because I remember waking up from it both times. But I had a nightmare that I'm laying in bed and my brother's next to me, and we always kept the doorway to the hallway open and the light on in the hallway. I don't know why, but I had to have the hall light on. That was my thing. And so I'm laying there in the bed and the hall light's on. And I've never told anybody this detail that I think connects to this. So if you're hearing this for the first time, this is, I think, connects to it. So the hallway door opens, or it's already open, but a mist starts coming into the room, and it's like shining through the light in the hallway, whatever. And a silhouette of this thing comes into the room, same exact size as the clown demon that we saw in real life. And it has its arms cocked out just like the clown demon did. Now this thing was in the foreground of the hallway light, so you can't tell what it looks like. It just looks like a black shadow. And it walks in. It says this phrase that I'll never forget, but I'm not going to say it ever. I won't even say it to my brother or even write it down or anything because I don't know what it means. I think it was its name, but I don't know, and it just makes me super uncomfortable. But it speaks this, basically a threat that essentially it tells me that it's going to kill me, is basically more or less what it says. Without saying exactly what it said, but it basically tells me it's going to kill me. It walks up to me and it jumps on top of me and starts attacking me, and then I wake up, from the nightmare. So that was a freaky nightmare I had. Well, then a year later, we upgraded to our bunk bed, and I slept on the top. My brother slept on the bottom. Now, because I slept closest to the doorway in the original bed, this thing in the nightmare attacked me because I'm sitting closest to where you would enter the room. So I have the exact same nightmare a second time about a year later after we had upgraded to the bunk beds. Except now we're in the bunk beds, which is weird. So I'm on the top, rolled over, looking at the doorway. Same thing, doorway's open, hall lights on, the mist starts coming in, and this thing silhouetted by the light comes in with its arms cocked, same size, says the exact same phrase, says that it's going to kill me, except now it's talking to my brother because he's on the bottom bunk closest to this thing, and he jumps on him and attacks him, and then I wake up from the nightmare. So that freaks me out because it was the same size. Its arms were the same length. Now, these were definitely nightmares. These two things didn't actually happen in real life. But how in the world did those two things connect so closely together? And does that somehow mean that this whole thing with the clown demon is going to at some point happen a second time in real life? Is what freaks me out about it. And why, to this day, I'm still kind of jumpy. Because in the back of my mind, I am still to this day prepared. Not prepared, but I almost expect to experience it again. And I don't know. I don't know if I will. I mean, it's been, over 12, 13 years now since it happened, and close to 17, 18 years since I had those nightmares, And so I don't know that it will. It just freaks me out because it's weird that I had two different nightmares identical, other than the details of where we were sleeping, which changed in real life as the nightmares corresponded to it. And then the size and the look of the creature, at least in its general silhouette, was identical to what we saw in real life, in person, in the flesh. That freaks me out for sure.
The lady that I'd interviewed last year that had saw this thing watching her while she was sleeping.
Yeah.
She wrote them off as demons.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think a lot of things get labeled as demons these days.
Yeah. I mean, we always we didn't know what to call it, so we always just called it the clown demon because
Right.
it looked like a clown and it looked unbelievably evil. So clown demon was just kind of the word that we've always stuck with.
I think what people interpret as demons, again, I think it all correlates back to it's something from a different realm of
Well,
is it a spiritual
right.
world, a whatever? And I think a lot of the stuff manifests itself into our world, and I think they take whatever physical form they have to take a physical form of.
Yeah.
And they have to abide by our three-dimensional environment. So things don't always look normal with them because some things are out of proportion. And if you actually look into some of the theories, it's more or less this one guy that wrote a book about it, but people believe him. He said that he thinks clowns were like Nephilim. And
I've listened to that episode.
Yeah,
yep.
and
Can't remember what show that was on, but yeah, I know what you're talking
he's been
about.
on a few. But he wrote this book about how if you look at the old depictions of clowns or whatever, and you read into like the depictions of what people reported, like at these Nephilim looking things, he said clown were Nephilim because they had the weird over proportional shapes and
the over exaggerated shapes that
Yeah.
a clown takes advantage of in his outfit and whatever. Yep.
and then most of them had like red to weird colored hair. Well, the stereotypical clown has the big bright red hair.
Yep.
So you can draw the parallels between things. People can interpret it how they want to, but we live in a town. Well, you said this happened in Columbus, so it's not in Peru,
Yeah.
but you guys still live in the outskirts of Miami County, which almost 150 years ago at this point, like this was the big main hub of the circuses around here.
So that's my thought on it is the clown demon thing is as far as I can remember, the only paranormal experience that I've ever had that did not happen in Peru. And so part of me asks the question, did it look like a clown because it was from Peru? And it had something to do with the circus history or, something to do with that? Because it's just such a weird off-color abstract thing that this thing just happened to look like a clown. It just doesn't make any rational sense other than the fact that I was scared of clowns and didn't like them. But
why does everyone, again, I paraphrase when I say everyone, I don't mean everyone, but like, why are people afraid of clowns? Like that is a fear.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people
it's like a primal fear.
Yeah, they have a fear of clowns. And I don't know if it's because of the uncanniness of them, but clowns genuinely have a creepy factor to them. And a lot of people are afraid of them. My wife doesn't even like them.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. And people say, well, it's because of it. Well, I think it taps into the fear of clowns.
Yeah, I was scared of clowns before the clown demon encounter. The clown demon encounter didn't make me any more scared of them. I mean, I just feel very uneasy around them and don't want to. It's almost like something in me recognizes that it's not good. Whatever it is something you don't want to be around.
The picture that I showed you a little bit ago, it's from a movie called Cat's Eye, which is from a Stephen King story. And again, Stephen King's strange because he writes a lot of stuff that is very similar to, I think, where it connects to real world stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But in that story, and I'm sure I'll get told that I was wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's like an old elfish creature that sneaks in at nighttime, and I think it's trying to like, I don't know if it's trying to kill the little girl or steal her life force or something like that, but the cat sees it and the cat's trying to protect her. Like, I've never read the book and I've never watched the movie. I just know of
I'll
what
have
it
to
is.
Look it up.
But it's just little humanoid troll looking, elf looking, creepy looking thing. And he's got the weird hat on. It's got like almost like the old jester type clothes. Well, again, like that was what clowns were to hundreds of years ago. Like they
Yep.
had the funny man, the jester, and like everything else. And like a lot of the time, even depictions, and you mentioned earlier, like it looks similar, like a little person or whatever. So it is almost to the extent like those were the type of people that they used as gestures, like to be funny, like the little dwarf people or whatever. I don't.
Right.
So what is that parallel?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
It sounds very similar. Again, like if you go through history and people look into things and they research things, you will see that there are some sort of, and I don't like to use the word, has gotten very trendy, but synchronicities of everything that
Mhm.
kind of overlaps each other. Like, and as we evolve, again, I think these things are evolving with us, because even today, people have talked about having these strange encounters, these strange experiences, and hundreds of years ago, people were calling them fairies.
Yep.
So what if these things that we're seeing now that we're calling demons, or even to some extent people call them aliens,
Yep. Yep.
what if it was the same thing? These things have always been here.
Yeah.
We just call them something different.
Yep.
So
And the thing that well, it doesn't really bother me, but my main issue with coming out and telling this story publicly has absolutely nothing to do with the ridicule. You know, people will say, "Well, I don't want to talk about, I saw a Bigfoot, but I'm not going to tell anybody because they'll think I'm crazy." And I could care less what you think. If you think I'm lying or you think, I made it up or whatever, or I was dreaming or what. I mean, like I said, my brother saw it too, so I know that it really happened. The problem for it with me is now that I've put out there what the details were, anything that I hear going forward, I can't necessarily trust, because now that I've established, well, there was this red light and there was this metal door thing. And I mean, when I hear that stuff before I've ever told anybody, I know, that this is legitimate evidence. Well, I can't necessarily 100% for sure trust that now going forward, because somebody very well could have listened to this episode and thought, well, I'm going to make up a story, that has a metal door noise in it. Or, because there's a chunk of this community that thinks that this is a connection between that and demons or, whatever. So it creates, a reliability issue for me personally. Somebody else might listen to this and they have a story that they've never told, and something I'm saying, corresponds to something they experienced. So it could potentially help somebody else, which is because I'm trying to ultimately get to the bottom of how in the world did that happen? How is it even possible that that happened? And I think, you say it at the end of your documentary, and I share the sentiment that what did I see? How did this event occur? And so there's this conundrum in every area of the paranormal Bigfoot, I just call it the cryptid community. So whether you've seen a UFO, a Bigfoot, a dogman, the clown demon, the Mothman, a ghost, whatever it is, they all share a strange similarity in that what you saw, it was right there in front of your face, in the flesh. I mean, you really did see what you saw. But would you at the same time turn around and, like you're talking about deer or wolves, tell somebody there really is such a thing as dogmen? if somebody tells you, well, dogmen don't exist, whatever you saw, it's not a real thing. Or the clown demon, what I saw really was there, and it had weight, and you could hear its footsteps, and it was there in the flesh. But I would never tell somebody that a clown demon is a real thing that you can encounter, or that clown demons exist. So if somebody came to me and said, well, this is all a big made up story, clown demons aren't a real thing, I would agree. I'd say, yeah, you're right, they aren't. So how did I see what I saw? And people that see Bigfoot, like my coworker saw one roll into an open field and then it was just gone. People that see UFOs see it and it does something crazy and then it's just gone. People see ghosts and they manifest and then they're just gone. So they're there, they really are there and they really are seeing it. And then all of a sudden, it isn't there anymore. It's not like it moved locations. It's not like a deer when it runs into the woods and, okay, well, if you go, 3/4 of a mile south, you're going to find it, standing right here. It goes from you see it and it is there to just ceasing to exist as we understand existence. And so so people are always asking the question and chasing the answers of what happened. Well, what would constitute an answer to the question on this? What would I have to learn to know what I experienced in reference to the clown demon? And I think that I've done enough research at this point that I at least know the question that needs answered. And that is, how is it possible that the group of people, the skeptics and the unbelievers, come out and say, well, Bigfoot's not real, Dogman's not real, UFOs and aliens, they don't exist. And yet, or the clown demon's not real, and whatever Brandon Wright saw that night, that didn't really exist, that didn't really happen. And then the person telling the story that they actually saw it. How is it possible that those two groups of people are somehow simultaneously both right about what they're saying? One group's saying it doesn't exist. The other one's saying, well, I guess, but I really did see it. Somehow those two things are true simultaneously. And the way that we currently understand the world, that's not possible. And so the answer to that question, how is it that I saw the clown demon and yet clown demons don't exist? And I would agree with you, they don't exist. So what happened? How did how is it there? And where did it go? Or whatever you saw, how was that thing there and what happened to it? It doesn't exist, but I don't know. But yeah, the answer to that question is, I think, the answer that would give us maybe not the full, complete, overarching answer to the entire phenomenon in all of its forms, but I think it would answer enough of it that we could at least start to say, okay, well, now that we understand how these two things can be possible at the same time, we can use that to kind of help explain one element of it or another. Or I think that question is probably the most important question currently in the entire phenomenon, whether you're talking about a UFO or Bigfoot or Dogman or the clown demon or Mothman or whatever it is. It could be any crazy thing that somebody really did see. The answer to that question is, I think, the ultimate thing that I am currently pursuing as, all right, this is what, from what I can tell, it's all connected. And all of these things are actually being seen by people in person, in the flesh, as a physical thing. And then somehow, one way or another, it just snaps out of existence, or it's there and then it ceases, as we understand it, ceases to exist altogether. Sometimes right before people's eyes, like with the clown demon, it didn't do it in front of us. It ran into the kitchen out of sight. And then at some point, it just wasn't there anymore. And so I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that question is, or how that's possible that those two things, how the skeptical view and the believing view can both be simultaneously right. But I think they are both simultaneously right. I don't think they're at odds with each other. I think the skeptical view is a huge part of actually answering the question of what's going on.
There's an interview that I did recently, and it's not been released on the mainstream of everything as far as like my normal show. Like, it's currently awaiting to be released as we're recording this. So by the time this airs, it had already came out. But we discussed how the more we evolve, paraphrase, the mystery continues. And that's part of the thing. I don't think we're supposed to actually know. I think we're continuously given these things to keep searching. It keeps us going. Like, we're always asking the questions. It brings things to our attention. It makes things happen. And then we just keep going with it. That's why if you look through history, they've had these different depictions. They've had these different encounters. They've had these different things. What if it's all the same thing? What if the mystery itself is supposed to be a mystery and we're not supposed to have that answer,
Right.
but it's supposed to give us these things don't exist. These things, we see them even though they're not real, but we're still seeing them. We encounter them. People see these things. They encounter these things. They don't exist, but it makes us question why we're seeing this. And that question is what keeps people going.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
that's the mystery of it all, is we're not going to get the answer. But
Yeah.
we're going to keep searching because that's what it does. It drives us, our curiosity. It
Right.
keeps us
I mean,
pushing.
it's possible that it is a totally unanswerable question. Maybe we never will be able to collect any sort of type of evidence, because when we collect evidence of anything, whether it be Bigfoot tracks or, oh, we found the tree pulled up and placed in a tree structure. Okay, that's physical evidence of what it did while it was here. But how do we gather a type of evidence that shows us an element of how these things are able to do what they do, be here 1 minute or for a day or whatever, and then not be here anymore? And I don't know that that's possible to answer. I mean, maybe the closest we'll ever get is kind of coming more to grips with that overall question of how those two seemingly contradictory things are both simultaneously true, and drawing more or less guesses from it and getting a pretty good idea of how we think it sort of functions. You know, if does the metal door, I mean, just as an example, does the metal door noise, is that like a unintended side effect of something opening a portal to enter into where we are? Is it an intentional sound that's done to signal the intentions of whatever it is that's coming through? You know, does it have anything to do with a portal at all? You know, I mean, does the red light mean anything? Is that the color that a portal emits? Is that something that the creature needs to survive where it is for a certain period of time? Or like, what do those, what does the red light mean, and what does the noises that we heard mean? What was the purpose of any of that, if any purpose? Is it just, well, you know, the portal just happens to be red, you know, and it and so it just gives off a lot of energy, and so it glows and it just happens to be red? Like, I don't know. Oh, I'm not. Okay.
You'd mentioned the metallic sounds, and in the documentary, like towards the end, the reason I went back to this place called Hobbit Land, which ironically, a hobbit is a little humanoid looking thing. And the reason they call that out there is because that area has been known to have lots of little creature activity, which again, goes back to what we've just been talking about, like people seeing little human looking things, little puckwudgie looking things, little weird, strange creature things. And I was out there just filming stuff and just to put in like B-roll footage. And for anyone that doesn't know what B-roll is, it's basically just like your landscape, nature shots, stuff to like put things together. And as I was walking back to the vehicle, I hear a metallic clank. And I'd mentioned it in the documentary. That is the whole reason, like towards the end of the documentary, I mentioned hearing something like when we're back out there. Because when I was filming, there's metal guardrail around that bridge. And the noise, I replicated the noise. It sounded like something was dragging something across the guardrail. I'm out there in broad daylight. And you could like the noise itself, like you can hit the guardrail and it sounds very similar to what I heard. So I actually tried to go and look underneath of it on both sides and on the other side. Like I tried to see if there was something smacking up against the guardrail to try and rule out why I heard that noise. Cause it sounded like something was scraping, not like just hitting it, but like it's almost like dragging something across of it. So you hear like the like something being dragged across the guardrail. I could not figure out anything. I didn't see a branch that would have been swaying, scraping it or anything like that. So that made me want to go back out there. So we went back out a few nights later, and that's when we recorded the end of the documentary when we had those boxes and things out there and all that weird stuff happened. What if the things that made that noise were trying to draw my attention? And then we get all these responses back from the spirit box. And I was just listening to this yesterday through my headphones. I was going through the whole last scene again. Some of the noises, and again, maybe it's because of just being too close to it. So I'm hearing things that I think it's saying, but like those spirit box things, you have to take them with a grain of salt. But like when I was listening to the recording, I asked, what are you? I swore, like listening to it yesterday, it sounded almost like the response said Hobbit, which was strange because we call that Hobbit land. So is it just saying that's what it is because that's where it thinks that's what we're going to refer to it as? So is it trying to mimic itself to relate to what we call it? So it's trying to pretend to be what it says it is because that's what it's known for being out there. So,
could be.
But again, the metal noise is what drew me to go back to that place because we'd already been out there before and I'd filmed some stuff prior to that. Didn't get anything with it. So I didn't use any of that footage because if there's nothing on it, I'm not just going to put it on there because what's the point? So when I made the film, I wanted to make sure to include everything that actually could be shown as stuff happening other than 2 hours of walking in the woods with nothing happening. To me, those things are boring.
Yeah.
We've got hours upon hours of boring footage that never got used because there was nothing going on, and I'm not going to include all that. I tried to include everything that I could.
Yeah. And I guess part of the question about the metal door thing for me is like in your instance, could have been like a Bigfoot type thing where it's like a tree knock. So it's picking up a physical thing and smacking another physical thing to create a noise. In our and our experience is the only time I've ever heard this particular version of it. But what we heard was indoors. We were inside of a house. We weren't outside. And there was absolutely nothing that would make this like metal door scraping on concrete, like loud on a PA speaker type. There was no physical or natural explanation as to how any of the three noises we heard happened inside this house. And my grandma and grandpa never woke up. It was like, I don't even know how to explain how loud it was. If you were upstairs, you would have easily heard it. It would have woke you immediately up. But my grandma and grandpa didn't. They were asleep upstairs and never woke up, never came downstairs, not even after the whole thing was over. We basically laid there now that I know that he was awake too, we both laid there frozen, completely terrified until we just fell back asleep and got, waken up at some point for breakfast later on in the morning.
When you talk to your brother about it, is there anything else besides the laughing that stood out to you? Did he like his description? Did it match yours? Like
Yeah.
the way it looked?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I said, everything, the way he described it and the experience of it. Well, another small detail that when I had that conversation with him about 8 months ago that I guess I just didn't think was even worth mentioning, but when it was on the end table, right, like basically from me to this water bottle, it stood with its arms cocked out to its side and it was looking directly at my brother. It like leaned in toward like his face, and he remembers that part of it too. That was a particular detail we didn't discuss when he originally mentioned it when we were at the Chinese restaurant in Wabash. And about 8 months ago when we talked about it again, I recalled that detail and he goes, "Okay, so you remember that happening too?" Because yeah, it bent down and like didn't really bend down, but it just kind of leaned in, almost like it was trying to get a better look at him.
I know you said you don't say what it said to you and anything like that, but because whatever it spoke to you wasn't like an English word or something that you weren't familiar with. Like I know you
No.
said the second part, but whatever you thought, maybe like saying what his name was or something.
Right. And that was spoken in these two nightmares that I had, not when we physically encountered the clown demon.
Yeah, but the thing in the nightmare you said looked similar to the
right.
clown.
It was the same exact size and it had its arms cocked out to the side, just like the.
And those nightmares happened before.
Right. Yeah. It was maybe 5 or 6, 7 years before the actual real life encounter.
Have you ever tried to spell out what the first thing it said to you was?
I thought about writing it down at one point in like a journal entry, and I'm like, I don't know what it means. I could spell it out.
I say if you could spell it out, and you don't even have. I'll do the research, so you don't ever have to look. I am curious to see if I can find what this word relates to something. I will do what I can do, and I can let you know.
Yeah.
That way, you're not the one involved with it.
I mean, I don't even think I've told my brother about. I mean, I've told him about the nightmares and how I think it might be correspondent. I don't think that I even told him what this word was that it spoke, because I don't know. I don't know what it meant or what the significance of it was. I mean, it was a totally abstract, foreign, like, almost like a Lovecraftian, it sounds goofy, but like a Lovecraftian cosmic sort of word that to me, it doesn't mean anything. I don't know what it means, but what it said was entirely in English other than that one word. And yeah, I don't, it just makes me uncomfortable even thinking about the sentence it spoke to me, but it was a threat of death is what it was telling me that it was going to kill me is basically what it was saying to me.
Yeah, that word, since you've mentioned it, like I've been harping over here, I was like, I want to know what the word was because I want to look into it, because for some reason I am very curious about stuff like that.
And again, I mean, because there was 2 of these, and this is why I'm apprehensive about it, because there's 2 of these nightmares. There's only one real life encounter. Is the word like the trigger? I don't remember, but did I say the word at some point while we were at our aunt and uncle's? Because we never had any paranormal. I mean, we spent weeks out there for years after year after year after year, never had anything even remotely paranormal happen. So did I like write the word down at some point while we were there, or say it, off the cuff, like, or maybe I did mention it to my brother and told him what the word was and what it said or whatever, and somehow that triggered. I don't know that, so that's why I just kind of refuse to say it, or I don't know. I mean, I've thought it in my mind plenty of times, so doing that doesn't trigger anything. I know that.
So if you think about it and things don't manifest from your thought process. And if you like, some people will say the word, and that's like it opens that. I don't want to reference Beetlejuice, but like in the movie Beetlejuice, like you have to say it 3 times and then manifest him or whatever. Like, where do they come? Where gave them that idea?
Yeah, I mean, it said the word twice, both times, and I mean, I can still hear exactly what the voice sounded like in my head. I mean, and that's another part of it too. Is like I'll have really vivid, weird dreams, but maybe a year later, I remember very little about it. I remember these 2 nightmares like yesterday, every single little minute detail about it as if it had actually happened. And I actually, weirdly enough, remember the dreams more vividly than I remember the actual real life experience of the clown demon encounter. And I think a big part of that is a complete refusal to even believe that the clown demon thing ever happened. And so I put it out of my mind for so many years before I found out that my brother experienced it too. That I think that, unfortunately, I mean, I can remember all the important details about it, but it's fuzzy compared to these 2 nightmares that I had.
They say that giving things power by thinking about it, like being afraid of it, everything, like you're feeding it. And that's what these things manifest to. And I'm not sure if you've heard me reference this on my show or another show that I've been on, but it would have been January of 2024. So 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, there was a shadow that ran down my hallway towards my daughter's room. And it was probably like maybe 18 inches tall. And it was on 2 legs. And it reminded me of a little humanoid looking thing. And I ran into her room and I never seen anything. And this was after midnight. We had just gotten home from, I remember specifically because we'd been gone. We'd went to Disney World. We went there for New Year's. So this was after we'd gotten back. I think it was like the weekend after we got back. So it was like the first or second week of, which would have been 2024. Now, prior to this, before Christmas, there was the instance where my son, the one that came in here rudely a little bit ago, that's why we had to take a break. He's only 4. He'll be 5 here soon. So he would have been 2. He came into our bedroom and was freaking out because he was saying ghost. And at that time, he couldn't really talk because he was young, but he kept being ghost, daddy, ghost. And we didn't see what he was pointing at. And I actually have video of him being afraid on the couch because he'd said there was a ghost back there. And he was pointing. You could tell he's visibly shaken up because he kept saying ghost. This is the same time frame that we found that tooth. It looked like a child's tooth. I got rid of the tooth. Well, no, I rephrase it. I gave it to my wife and she said she threw it away. February of 2024, the tooth came back. We found the tooth again. Like that.
Same exact tooth?
Yeah, I will explain that off air. But she threw it in the trash. The dog had the tooth when I found it the first time in December. I showed her, it looked like one of the kids lost a tooth, but had a big root to it, which didn't make any sort of sense. I have photos of everything. And then the same dog was chewing on it again in February. And my wife turns pale as a ghost because she said she threw that tooth in the trash. And it's the same exact tooth because there's a crack in it, and the crack's in the same exact spot. So it is an identical tooth. And it looks like a little child's tooth.
But it has like roots on it.
It has a root to it, like it had been an adult tooth.
That's weird.
Yeah, so...
You've got pictures of it?
Yeah.
I'll have to look.
I'll show you here in a second. But all that was going on. I see this little humanoid thing running. We live in an area between a couple of rivers. And part of the reason why I do what I do in the documentary and everything is because there has been so much weird stuff that have gone on since we've been here. We've been here since 2020. Like at this house and this property. when we first moved in, my daughter got scratched on her back, 3 scratches, which everyone says 3 is demonic. And that was right after we'd heard the voice in the baby monitor say mine about her, how we interpreted that. And they've had imaginary friends. Now my son, he has an imaginary friend named Johnson, who's 4 years old and has a mustache. Yeah. I don't like imaginary friends.
Yeah.
That's creepy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it makes, and I've been told it's not the house, it's the lands. Okay, well, what are you supposed to do about stuff like that? You can't.
Right.
But that doesn't explain why I saw an 18-inch tall shadow looking thing running down the dark hallway along the wall. Like I could see the reflection of the shadow on the wall running. So something was in front, and the way the light was hitting it, I could just see it scurrying down my hallway right towards my daughter's room.
Oh.
And I ran right in there. She's sound asleep. But again, your description of what you said is literally the depiction that I have in my head of what this thing would have looked like, because it looked like it was wearing a hat with longish hair, but I'm just going by what the shadow represented.
Mm-hmm.
And I picture it looking like a little, almost like a yard gnome, but obviously a little bit taller, but that was like the shape of it or whatever. I don't know. Like I said, I didn't physically see the thing running. I saw the shadow going across the wall. So
Wild.
Could it have been a bug reflecting across the nightlight? It's possible, because we have a nightlight in the hallway, and that's what, for anyone not understanding, I went outside because in our garage we have a fridge, and that's where we keep a lot of the drinks and stuff out there, so they're not inside the kitchen. So I went out and grabbed a drink because I woke up in the middle of the night and I was thirsty, and I was walking back in, and the light in our hallway, we have a night light in there so you can go to the bathroom or our bedrooms or whatever and you can see. And I saw the shadow from the night light. That's how I'd seen whatever was going down the hallway. Again, I wasn't asleep because I literally just walked out to the garage and got a drink. And then I hauled ass into my daughter's bedroom.
Right.
Trying to see what this thing was. I was going to football punt it
Well,
right out.
right. And that's what freaks me out about the clown demon thing, is it's like, if this is something that could potentially happen again, or Bigfoot or whatever, if I go out in the woods and encounter a Sasquatch, I want to know, what is it capable of? What could possibly be its intentions? If I need to act or react, what do I need to do to deal with the situation? Same with the clown demon. Is this something that I could, like, obviously I'm like maybe 9 or 10 when we see the clown demon, maybe a little older than that, 11 or 12. I mean, if this thing manifests again, can I shoot it? And if I do shoot it, is it going to die? Or is it, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if it does it. What do I do about it? And that's what kind of drives me to know more, is like, I want to, for the sake of knowledge and security, I want to know everything I can know about it in case it does happen again and its intentions aren't. I mean, the clown demon didn't do anything to harm us. It was very evil looking and evil acting, but it never touched us. It never attacked us.
It didn't jump on you or anything like that. Yeah.
No, it didn't do what assuming the thing in the nightmare is the same thing. It didn't do what it did in the nightmare. It didn't speak. It didn't attack us. It just like looked at us and then like leaned in and got a good look at my brother's like face and then turned around and left. I mean, the whole encounter, from, if you're not counting the noises, from the light slowly glowing up into the dining room, the red light, to the thing running in from the kitchen door into the dining room and yada, 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 and then it leaving and running back into the door, was maybe 3 minutes. I mean, the overall encounter wasn't very long. And that's what's just so strange, is like, why, what was the point of that whole, what did it have an intention? Is this something where these things appear and it does it in a way that they can't control? They just kind of, oh crap, well now I'm in this person's house, I mean, or does it appear with an intention behind it? Was it there for a reason? and it needed to do something before it left. I don't know. And what it needed to do was just look at us. Why leave and that's all? I mean, I don't know. It's just weird.
Yeah, I have no idea. But I did just get a message from my wife that apparently my goat has escaped.
Oh shoot, we better cut it off.
So I'm gonna have to go collect the goat here in a second. But before I do all that, there's gonna be a couple things I wanted to bring up.
Okay.
You guys were in the documentary, you and your dad.
Yep.
My plan moving forward, everyone keeps asking me if I'm going to do another documentary or whatever. I don't know if I'm going to do a full-on documentary, but I'm going to find certain areas that I want to go out and actually do an investigation at. So I would like to be able to come back out to your guys' land at nighttime and set up some stuff and just see what I can catch with my night vision, my thermals, and all that stuff.
Well, so here in the last 3 weeks, we bought a microphone, a really decent recorder. We've got plans to build essentially a box that we're going to leave out in the woods, and it'll be able to run for 3 or 4 days. And then we can hook the audio into Audacity on the spectrogram and view it visually to see if we can capture the clacking or the howl that my dad heard in the tree stand, any of that stuff again. And we had plans here just last week to go camping out there, and spend a night. So yeah, I would like to do that as well.
Yeah, I would like to be able to do that. There's some other locations that I didn't film at that have been brought to my attention afterwards. So there's some quote unquote hot spots that I'm going to check out that weren't necessarily in Miami County. There's some over here in Cass County. But again, I don't necessarily think it's all just related to, but I don't think our imaginary county lines hold things to that. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. It doesn't care if it's in Miami or Cass.
Yeah. It doesn't care where it's at. Like our property lines. Oh, like we imaginary made this your property line. So I can't cross over here because this is not yours anymore. I don't think that stuff really controls how this stuff works.
I'm his demon, so I don't cross this other guy's yard.
Yeah. So there are some locations that I'm going to hit up, but I definitely would like to go back out to your guys' area and like in the woods out back and like just go out there with my thermal and stuff, see if I can pick up anything, see if there's any weird stuff going on. Because you guys still have continued activity going on out there.
As of 4 weeks ago?
Yeah. So that's definitely something on the horizon that I would like to do. And
I would too.
I would like to release them as their own individual, like I don't want to call them an episode, but like it's basically its own episode of an expedition. I don't want to call it an expedition, but like, you know what I mean? Like my own little research area. Yeah. So that is what I have on the horizon. So definitely like to get you guys involved.
I would like to go out to some of these other places too and see if anything happens. So, I mean, if you're ever conducting an investigation and you just need somebody to hold a camera or something, I'll, help you out or lend a hand or whatever, because I don't know.
That's the plan. I want to try and keep it as small as I can, like just a handful of people, because I think when you get too many people out there, you get too much contamination.
Yep.
So I always try and go like 2 or 3 people and then keep it at that, because
it's a good idea.
You think about these shows and they have camera crews out with them and they're filming. It's like you have like 15 people out there.
Paramedic team on standby. Yeah. The only other thing I would mention is, and I forgot to mention it when we were talking about it. Last year we spent a week at my uncle's house, and it was the uncle that owned the house that the clown demon encounter happened in. And him and my aunt are divorced now. They're not together anymore. So he lives in a different place. As far as I know, she still lives in the house where this happened in Columbus. But I told my dad, because I've told my parents about the clown demon thing. I told him, I said, I might mention something to him to see if he knows anything about it. And he's like, you should, And I'm like, I don't know. So we spent a week out there, and it was like the last day or second to last day I thought about it. I just can't. I don't want this conversation to come up with him specifically, especially if he knows something, because it's going to just seriously freak me out. So I chose not to say anything. And the last night we were there, we were trying to get his he had like a shuffleboard table, whatever you call that. It's like just basically like a table you slide pucks down and try to score points. We were pouring like glass beads over it, trying to get the pucks to slide right. And we could not for the life of them get this thing to work. And so you would set the puck down and it would just start like moving all over the place on its own. And I just, as a joke, I said, man, I said, geez, you could use this thing as a Ouija board if you wanted to, just joking with him. And he was dead serious. And he's always messed around, but I could tell he was dead serious when he said when he said this to me. He goes, no, he says, I already lived in a house with evil spirits in it for like 10 years. I'm not going down that road. And that kind of tipped me off that maybe he does know something about this. And so I didn't want to really talk about it, but I just kind of vaguely pushed and I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he goes, oh, nothing. He goes, I'm just kidding. I'm just messing with you. But he like went from dead serious and he like snapped out of it right away. And, I could tell whatever he had experienced, he really did experience. He was serious. So I don't know. I think he does know something about it or experience something related to it when they lived in that house. I don't know.
Most people experience things and try and write it off. Like I do the same thing.
Like like I did for years, until my brother confirmed it and said that he remembered it. That's why my memory of it is as fuzzy as it is. I can remember the major details of the event, but I wouldn't say that I remember it like it happened yesterday. But I can remember it as any other distant past event, for sure.
Well, I think we can wrap this one up. We've been going on for over an hour and a half, so
yeah, absolutely.
Definitely appreciate you coming back out here.
I appreciate you letting me talk about it, and yeah, it's been good.
Yeah. Again, for the listeners out there, keep an eye out because there may be new videos coming out on the Tinfoil Tales Films YouTube channel because I did have to create a new one because my original Tinfoil Tales podcast was demonetized and I was given no reason as to why other than they claim I'm putting out fake content. So I guess these interviews aren't real and not real people.
What?
Yeah, that's it didn't just happen to me. It's happened to some other people too. YouTube is cracking down on basically audio.
There are 3 R's in strawberry. AI can't solve that conundrum. So there you go.
Yeah.
I'm real.
I tried to appeal it. I couldn't get past the AI. Like I was getting emails from AI claiming to be real people and AI did a check on it. And yeah, so as of right now, my normal YouTube channel is kind of just, I'm still putting content out there, but it's not like, at what point are they going to continue to ban it? So I just
AI has decided that your content is AI.
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah. That's pretty sad.
Yep. Preparation for the data center.
Yep. Well, again, thanks for coming out this morning. And to the listeners out there, thanks for listening. And we will check you guys on the next one. If you would like to be a guest on Tinfoil Tales, remember to send an email to tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com, or you can also go to tinfoiltales.com and go to the contact section. Just make sure to reach out and get a hold of me, and we will get something scheduled for a future episode. You can also find Tinfoil Tales on Facebook and Instagram. Just look for Tinfoil Tales Podcast. You can reach out to me that way too. Remember to share the show around. Word of mouth is the best way to help the show grow. And just remember, truth comes at cost. Are you willing to pay the price?